phases tonight. All three phases won the ball game. Hey, great start to the season, guys. Excellent start to the season. We got a day off tomorrow. We'll come back Wednesday. We all about Miami. Hey, outstanding victory to start the season. We haven't done anything. Okay? We're going to take them one at a time. We're going to take them one at a time. Outstanding team victory, guys. Bring it in and break it down. Hey. Y'all listen to Give me your ears. Give me your ears one more time. Hey, we said it at the beginning of the season. We said it in training camp. We believe this. We in here for one reason. One reason. We got to go 1-0 next week. We got to go 1-0 next week.
We home now.
We home. Let's take it home. Come in Wednesday ready to work. Hey, and the home of the Jets.
And Eric Allen here from the live from the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. This is practice today presented by SiriusXM. Let's try that one more time. Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen. The Jets just wrapped up their week of practice as they open up the season at MetLife Stadium against the Miami Dolphins. It's going to be a packed crowd, according to CEO Christopher Johnson.
We are live outside the parking lot here, and you know what they used to call the Dolphins defense a couple decades ago?
I do not.
The killer bees, and there are bees all over the place.
Yes,
out
there are.
here.
Yes, there are.
But Sunday afternoon at MetLife Stadium, the Jets are going to want to swarm against the Miami Dolphins, just like the way they did against the Detroit Lions in a 48-17 rout to start the season, Greens. And yes, it should be raucous atmosphere at MetLife Stadium. I'm expecting a sellout, and I think people who are coming to the game, they're getting flags, right?
Yes. If you did if you weren't planning on going to the game, as if the Jets were not incentive enough to go, you now get a flag if you go. It is a one-team, one-goal flag. The theme of Sunday's game is one team, one goal. And ironically, the Jets open up their home slate against the Miami Dolphins for a second consecutive year. Last year in Week 3, EA, the Jets really dominated that game as well. It was a 20-6 final score, but not indicative of what really transpired on the field, because if you remember, the Dolphins scored on the final play of regulation, and that was all.
Yeah, the Jets really won that game, and they had control of it from wire to wire. A lot of similarities between this season and last season for the Dolphins, because the Dolphins had a bye in Week 1. They came to MetLife Stadium in their second game, and like you said, Greens, 20-6, and the crowd was in that ball game from the get-go. And like I said, after Jets Nation took over Ford Field in Detroit Monday night, there's just going to be thousands and thousands of more green and white faithful at home. And this is one of the more eagerly anticipated openers, I would say, in years for this Jets team, looking to move to 2-0 on the season before a short week, and then they'll be headed to Cleveland to take on the Browns. But I've been impressed by the way the Jets, their head coach, their CEO, all the players in the locker room have taken their approaches this week. One-game season against the Miami Dolphins. They're not looking behind in a rearview mirror. They're looking ahead. And they know the Dolphins are going to come here ready to play, because the Dolphins want to prove a point, too, because they can get to 2-0.
The Dolphins, like you said, also 1-0 on the year. They played the Titans last week in what seemed to be the game of all day Sunday. It was scheduled for 1 o'clock. It was delayed multiple times. But the biggest difference here for this Miami team against the Jets and just the season in general is the return of Ryan Tannehill. He did not play at all last season. And not that this means much, but he has a pretty good record at MetLife Stadium throughout his career. He's 3-1.
Yeah, listen, Tannehill, this Dolphins offense, to me, looks a lot different than it has in the past, because I always think of Miami as more of a finesse offense who wants to beat you through the airwaves. Now, with Tannehill back in the saddle, they're trying to lighten the load on him by getting Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore going early. That sets them up on the outside, and he has a deep vertical threat in Kenny Stills. A couple new receivers that Jets fans should be very familiar with in Danny Amendola and former Chief Albert Wilson. And Devontae Parker might be back in the lineup for the Dolphins this week. He is also another vertical threat. You want, and we'll talk about this later, you want to control that run game and make the Dolphins one-dimensional at home. and have that crowd give Tannehill a lot of problems communicating pre-snap.
Well, Tannehill, this is really his first year with Adam Gase as his head coach, because the first year, that's when you start to find out a little bit about the offense. And last year, Tannehill was not healthy for the entirety of the year. And back in 2016, granted, small sample size, you can't really look into it too much. He completed 67% of his passes, which is a very good number, but he only threw for 2,995 yards. And he threw 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He threw 2 picks last week.
Yeah,
so this is someone that you can pick off. Tannehill does make mistakes, as does every quarterback in the league. And about this Jets secondary in particular, I mean, this unit played out of its mind in week 1. 3 picks of Matt Stafford and Matt Castle. Jamal Adams picked off Matt Castle towards the end of the game. Claiborne and Trumaine Johnson both had a pick. So what does this Jets secondary need to do to control the Miami Dolphins and, like you said, make that team one-dimensional?
Keep on communicating well, and that's something we saw Monday night in Detroit. But we were both in the locker room this week when Morris Claiborne said, we can do a lot of things better. I thought Jamal Adams was all over the field Monday, and that might have been his finest performance as a professional. Claiborne made a great play on the ball himself. And then you think about Darren Lee. He had his first 2 career interceptions, and he's going to help out in pass coverage as well. We'll get into the injury report later with some news on Marcus May, but you just want to see them communicating well and playing fast. And that's what stood out to me about the Jets' defense Monday night against Detroit, is that they played fast and they swarmed to the football. They were all over the place. But they think they can get better. It was just a start. With Miami Greens, you got to make sure that ball does not go over your heads because, like I mentioned before, Kenny Stills, he got down the field against the Tennessee Titans in their 24-17 win in week 1. He had 2 touchdown catches. And Devontae Parker, he's also a deep ball threat. So the Jets got to keep everything in front. You win early downs and take away that run, then you can get after Ryan Tannehill with some pressures.
Kenny Stills last week, he had a 75-yard touchdown. That's what you were talking about. And as it stands today, after 1 week, the Jets' rush defense is first in the NFL, only 39 yards allowed. And if you recall back to last year's season opener, you talked about this team, the Dolphins, looking very different. Well, Jay Ajayi was their running back, and at the time, he was one of the top in the league from the year prior. He only had 16 yards on the day. And why is this important that I'm bringing this up? Well, I know there's a certain record that could be eclipsed at MetLife Stadium this Sunday.
Yeah, you got to give Frank Gore a ton of credit, right? He's only 14 yards shy, tied in Curtis Martin for 4th all-time on NFL's rushing list. If he gets 15 yards, unfortunately, he would move into 4th place on Sunday. But both of these guys can do different things. Gore is the more straight-ahead bruiser, where Kenyon Drake is more of a shifty guy. But I talked to Buster Screen about it. He said he will lower his shoulder and deliver a boom himself. The Dolphins are going to try to establish their physicality. I frankly think that plays into the Jets' hands. Like you mentioned, Detroit did not stick with the run. I think Miami's going to try to stick with the run, but if they start trailing in this ball game, that means the ball goes to Ryan Tannehill, and that means you're going to see K.C. Rodgers come up with some schemes. Last week, we saw Jamal Adams early in that ball game come on a safety blitz on a run play, and he took care of LeGarrette Blount for a 7-yard loss. The other thing is, when I talk about exotics, there was a play on Monday night when Leonard Williams was playing inside linebacker.
How about that?
What do you think Ryan Tannehill would think about that if he saw that on Sunday?
I have no idea. He'd probably be a little scared, to be frank. No pun intended, but you talked about K.C. Rodgers. Earlier this week, he talked about the ageless wonder, of course. That's Frank Gore.
Defenses is communication. You got to talk. You got to let everybody know what you see, because the guy over here might not know what the guy over here is seeing. So it's all about communication. And as our team matures and get older, we hope the communication gets better.
What was the key to stopping the run?
Well, the thing is, that's the way we really want to try to play. We really want to be committed to trying to stop the run first, because, we feel like if we can't stop that, it's not to our advantage at all.
As far as I can say about them, they're a good team. got the basics. You know, they got good running backs, good receivers. You know, but you know, our focus is on us. You know, and doing everything that we can do. You know, to our ability and our scheme to go make plays. You know, so you know, like I said, they do the basics. They're going to run the ball, they're going to throw the ball, but you know, ultimately it's up to us. You know, and especially as a defense, you know, to go out and get 3 and outs to get our offense back the ball. Period.
What do you think about the speed that you guys played with on the defensive side of the ball last week?
I believe it was pretty good. I feel like we can be even better, and I feel like we will be better. You know, coming in this week, you know, versus last week.
Live here from the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. Here's an injury report for Sunday. Jets-Dolphins, 1 o'clock. Out Josh Martin, outside linebacker. He's still suffering from a concussion. Doubtful safety Marcus May, although head coach Todd Bowles did say that it will be a game-time decision Sunday morning to see what happens with May regarding whether or not he will play. But some good news for the Jets is that Jermaine Kearse not listed on the injury report, so all signs point that Jermaine Kearse should be a go come Sunday.
Greensley was a full participant throughout the week of practice, and that included today. He's coming off the abdomen injury, didn't suit up against the Lions. We saw him in pregame warm-ups, catching a couple balls, so we knew he was close. So all signs point to number 10 returning to the lineup. And it was a good start for the Jets wide receivers when you think about Quincy Enunwa, the 6 catches, the game-winning touchdown, the 21-yarder there in the second half. Terrell Pryor made a couple key catches there on that drive that culminated on Quincy Enunwa's touchdown. But Kearse would be a big addition because he's another guy who plays with a physicality that you like. He's got good hands, and a lot of times, even if he doesn't have a lot of separation, he can fight through a cornerback and come up with key receptions. He's a drive killer for a defense is concerned because he keeps drives alive. A lot of times on third down, you see Jets quarterbacks go to number 10, and each of these guys got different skill sets, that top 4 in terms of the Jets receivers, and we'll get a chance to see them all in action on Sunday. And you got to mention Robbie Anderson as well. Guy's quiet for first half against the Detroit Lions, and then Darnold goes up top. So that's going to give both of those guys confidence in each other.
The Jets' top 4 receivers present matchup problems throughout with Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa, Jermaine Kearse, and Terrell Pryor. Something that I liked what Carl Durrell said about Jermaine Kearse is he's the scientist of the group. He's a cerebral player, whereas someone like Quincy Enunwa, who played in his first game since 2016 season, He played technically in 2017 in Week 17, but Quincy had a phenomenal game against the Lions, and he's someone that he really picked up right where he left off. He had a career year last time he suited up on the field for the Jets, and he's really taken off so far. I know it's been 1 week, but this is someone that I know Jets fans and coaches have a lot of expectations for.
Well, he had to be happy. I mean, he, like you said, he missed the entire 2017 campaign, and then he came out, and Darnold targeted him 10 times in all. He's a guy who presents so many mismatch problems, and he does look better than ever. He delivers punishment after the catch. He's always a threat with the ball in his hands, and the Jets can do so many things with him outside the numbers, inside the numbers, lining up at tight end, etc. Quincy Enunwa is also an energizer guy, and when he's making plays, that Jets offense looks a lot different. Now you add Terrell Pryor to the mix this year. We know what Robbie Anderson's doing. He's becoming a more complete receiver, and Jermaine Kearse is back. This is an interesting group of receivers, and it's really something to think about how far the Jets have come at the position since the beginning of the 2017 season when Mike McCagnon orchestrated that deal, trading Sheldon Richardson to Seattle for Jermaine Kearse and a second-round pick. Oh, by the way, he used a second-round pick in the deal to go up from 6 to 3. And who did they get at 3? Oh, Sam Darnold.
It's funny how things shake out sometimes when you look at things through the rear view. But you talked about Quincy and the receiving core. Well, the Jets are going to have opportunities to put points up on the board because last season the Dolphins were 29th in the league in points per game. They allowed an average of 24.6 points. But that's all contingent upon if Sam Darnold has protection in the pocket, because the Dolphins have a pair of bookend rushers that can really hurt you if you let them.
Cameron Wake is ageless. I don't know how old he is. He's probably pushing 35. He's still playing at an elite level. And the Dolphins did something interesting in the offseason. They moved on from Ndamukong Suh, and they traded for Robert Quinn, a former L.A. Ram, who can bring some pressure off the edge as well. Todd Bowles actually said it this week, Greens, that it's like they have 6 guys out there when they have 4. So the focus this week, if you're watching at home, watch to see how the Jets tackles are doing. Calvin Beachum, Brandon Shell, because they're going against 2 premier edge rushers on Sunday afternoon.
Well, not only if you're watching, you can also watch what Calvin Beachum and Brandon Shell do. But how did you think that this offensive line performed against the Lions, against another premier talent in the league in Ziggy Ansah?
I thought they did really well, because I thought a lot of times Darnold had a lot of times to process, to go through his reads. He wasn't uncomfortable back there, which you wouldn't expect anyway because he's unflappable. But I thought a lot of times they did a good job. I know Ansah came up with 2 sacks, but for the most part, they were solid. And when I say solid, they were excellent in the run game. The Jets rushed for 169 yards on 36 attempts against Detroit. That was key. That's going to be key moving forward. That's one of my keys to this game, is continue that balance. I thought overall the Jets' offensive line was very good, and they were much maligned in the preseason. And they come up with an effort like this again in week 2, the offense is going to be able to move the ball.
Last week was the first time that the Jets' starting 5 offensive linemen played in a full game together throughout the preseason. They were banged up, like you said. But actually, earlier this week, Brian Winters, the right guard for the New York Jets, he caught up with Olivia Landis and talked about the run game.
Inside the Jets locker room, Olivia Landis joined by offensive lineman Brian Winters. Brian, with the win on Monday night, how does the line build off the offensive balance shown in week 1?
Yeah, we just got to build off of it. We really can't look back on it. We have a bigger task at hand this week, and we're studying hard, and we're looking forward to it.
What are some of the challenges that the Dolphins defense presents the offense for this coming game?
They're a big slant team, big motion team, which is a little different than what we originally faced, in Detroit. So it should be a whole different type of defensive scheme.
Being a different defensive scheme than you've faced in the past, how do you prepare differently for that?
We just got to put everything we did from week 1 away and start on a new slate and work forward on this week.
The offense implemented the zone blocking scheme. How did you think that went this past week?
I was excited about it. That something we've worked on in camp and something we really wanted to start doing, and I think it paid off well.
What about it made you so excited?
Big runs are always good for us.
Brian, what can you work on from that week 1 game to week 2 in order to get better?
Yeah, we just got to work well as a unit. I don't want to solo, myself out or anything, but as long as we work well together, we're going to do great.
Are there any specific improvements you want to work together as a unit?
It's communication. Just continue to build off what we had from week 1, and not move backwards, move forward.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Live here from the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. This wouldn't be a game preview if we didn't touch on all 3 phases of the ball, especially after Monday night's performance. EA, the Jets really put the special in special teams.
Andre Roberts, I think he had, 3 punt returns for about 137 yards, including a 78-yard touchdown.
That's the most return yards in Jets history for a punt.
How about that? Roberts had room, and you have to credit the blockers. And he told me this week that when I score, everybody scores. So you got to give Boyer a lot of credit for getting these guys all there on the same page. And look at the way they set up the sideline. There's a nice block right there. There's a seal. And to the house, Andre Roberts knows what to do with it. That's his 4th career return touchdown, the veteran out of Citadel. He made the roster because what he can bring you on special teams. Great sign for the Jets, encouraging start for this team that, frankly, they got a lot of backlash for what happened in week 3 of the preseason against the New York Giants when they were trying out guys, depth guys, to see what they could do. Conversely, you got to look at Jakeem Grant from the Miami Dolphins. There he goes. Last week, he was a key contributor for them because he took one back to the house. It was 102 yards, I believe, Greens. And he was the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. I would have went with Andre Roberts.
There's no bias there, none whatsoever. But Jakeem Grant, as a returner, averages 24.8 yards a return. Well, real quickly on special teams is that it wasn't just Roberts. It wasn't just the coverage units. Jason Myers hit 9 kickoffs for 9 touchbacks. Lachlan Edwards had 3 punts in the entire game. One pinned the Dolphins. Not there yet. One pinned the Lions on the 10. One pinned the Lions on the 6. The other one went out of bounds. So the Lions all-pro returner, Jamal Agnew, no returns. And how about this? No Jets statistics exist so far in the regular season in regards to special teams tackles because there was nothing happening
It's a key point about Myers because everybody's like, oh, yeah, the Jets are working out Dan Bailey. You got to sign Dan Bailey. Well, hold on a sec. Dan Bailey is an accomplished kicker in the National Football League, no doubt about that. But Myers is here because of his leg. He probably cemented the job with that 58-yard boom, the sonic boom in Philadelphia. But Brant Boyer has said with the rule changes this year, he expects to see more explosive returns. And if Myers keeps on putting them back far in the end zone or out of the stadium, maybe in the first or second row.
maybe hitting your car outside the lot.
That is exactly why the guy is here. So it's supposed to be, I think, around 80 degrees at MetLife Stadium. So if he's called upon, hopefully a number of times again, if you're a Jets fan, perfect conditions.
All right, so now this is the 2-minute drill. And again, Jets-Dolphins, 1 p.m., Sunday afternoon, the home opener. EA, this is a team that really needs to display some maturity because last year, maybe this is considered a trap game.
Yeah, you're right about that. You know, I think about the Jets' most complete performance in 2017 was against the Buffalo Bills on a Thursday night. They played well in all 3 phases. Then they came back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they laid a dud. This is a different team. They have better personnel. They are more mature. Now what they have to do is follow up a tremendous victory over the Detroit Lions with a win over the Miami Dolphins. Todd Bowles started it this week by saying, outstanding game, but guys, we have 15 to go. All the players have followed that mantra throughout the week. I anticipate the Jets to take the next step in their maturation process.
All 3 phases scored for the Jets on Monday night, but what are you expecting out of this offense, and what does the offense need to do to have a successful afternoon?
Jeremy Bates called a great game in his first time out as the Jets play caller. What impressed me was, Sam Darnold had a nice performance at quarterback, including him showing his resiliency, but the balance the offense showed was very encouraging, and that's what you want to see again this week. Against the Lions, 36 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground for the Jets. If they can pound the ball against this Dolphins defense, that's going to open things up for Sam Darnold and company on the outside and with his tight ends. So I'm looking at Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell against those Miami linebackers.
And then on the other side of the ball here, what are you expecting out of the defense after a pretty dominant performance in week 1?
Well, 5 takeaways. You can't beat that. But what you want to see against the Miami Dolphins, contain the run game. Put this game into Ryan Tannehill's hands. He had 2 interceptions against the Tennessee Titans. You'll be able to get after him with pressure, with exotic schemes, with numbers. And I anticipate the crowd being crazy. A festive atmosphere at MetLife Stadium as the Jets celebrate their season opener. You take away Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake, the Jets defense is going to have their way with Ryan Tannehill.
All right, that's all we have from practice today. Again, Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen. Jets-Dolphins Sunday, 1 o'clock. Make sure to catch EA and Anthony Becht on Pregame Central. That's at 11 o'clock.